There's still over 60 countries in the world where you can essentially live tax-free. If you do a digital business, it's a suicide to do it in your high-taxed home country. It's much easier to have a structure for 2,000 euros legally than for 200,000 legally. Many people just want to make money off fear. I confront them and say, you don't need that. If you start your business in Germany and pay 50% or even more taxes, then of course it's a much longer path to get successful.
From the future perspective, what countries do you think would be the best for the next 5 years or so? What do you think is the best countries right now for entrepreneurs? For those people who want to have amazing lifestyle and also at the same time have a digital business and manage it, what countries would you highlight in the world globally that can be a good option to move? In terms of Monaco, you mentioned a couple times as well in Europe. Like, how about those countries? Monaco, Andorra, smaller countries. For those entrepreneurs who are digital entrepreneurs who are just getting started and want to grow and scale their companies, what would be your number one advice for them? Hey, Christoph, welcome, and really glad to have you in this meeting where we can discuss a little bit more about tax structure. Would you like to give a little bit overview about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Christoph Heuermann. I'm 35 years old, and the last 12 years I'm traveling the world. I've been to every country in the world, and in the meantime scaled my business from basically nothing as a poor backpacker to a multi-million-dollar business globally with over 10 employees. We help people to live more free and get more wealthy by applying the right strategies to their lives, internationalizing themselves, or denationalizing, as my English blog is called, denationalize.me. So basically, it's about getting a new residency, citizenship, company structures, banking, investments in countries which treat you better than your home country.
Wow, that sounds impressive, Christoph. I'm really curious. How did everything started for you? Like, how was your story?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story I sometimes talked about. I try to keep it short. So I studied politics and public management. Yeah, I basically wanted to become a government official, working as a diplomat or for the United Nations or something like that. But in the first semester, I turned libertarian. I basically read the wrong books and was very active in the libertarian scene in Germany and Switzerland. And then after a while, obviously, I didn't want to work for government anymore, but do my own thing. And back then, I already had a lot of travel passion, and I looked for something where I can travel and have a business. And back then, in Germany, like this digital nomad movement was just starting. There were only a couple of people doing that publicly, and I was inspired about it. I met some international travelers on global libertarian conferences who already lived this perpetual travel lifestyle. And I thought, oh, maybe that's a nice niche, making all this perpetual travel English content into German and adapt it to the German market. And that's how I started basically 12 years ago as a pioneer. I completed my studies. I basically just deregistered from Germany after putting in my bachelor thesis back then over the topic of Bitcoin already, 2015. Had a one-way ticket to Mexico, 2,000 euros left on the bank accounts, and then I knew I had to make money within the next 3 months, and that's how I started my blog back then, almost 11.5 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds like a big risk as well. This when you took the decision, right, with not a lot of money. I know lots of people when they don't have a lot of money in the budget as well. Like, what was the confidence that is coming from that? Hey, I'm gonna make it work. Especially for those people who always doubt about that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I had to get a new perspective on life and business. Yeah, I mean, I was studying basically state science. Yeah. And that obviously didn't prepare me at all. So what I did is basically the last 2 years, I didn't really study. I basically just sat there, learned for my exams a couple of hours before and passed. But I prepared myself by reading a lot of books. Back then, there was not really AI like today, which is very helpful. But back then, I really had to read books, and I still have the list on my blog. I read like 133 books in 2015. Self-help literature, psychology, business, marketing, biographies of successful entrepreneurs. And that really helped me learn new stuff, but essentially getting a new perspective. Yeah, so I knew I'm speaking German, and like as a German, especially back then, you don't have like a lot of competition. Yeah, all this like Pakistanis, Filipinos, and so on. They cannot speak German, so they cannot compete with you. So if you offer yourself even below the minimum wage, you still make more than enough money to continue traveling as a backpacker, for example. So for me, it was not a decision. I cannot make it. I could always make it. It
Yeah.
just depended how comfortable it was. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds great. I know that you're one of the people who have deep knowledge in the taxation. So just coming right to the point as well, like what do you think is the best countries right now for entrepreneurs who are especially digital entrepreneurs? Let's start with those who are not making like a lot of money, let's say 10K, 20K, 30K, whatever, right? Below 100K. For those people, what countries would you recommend globally or internationally? Because I know people also love traveling and also at the same time having the business. What would be your recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends how you want to do it. Yeah, if you really want to focus on your business and stay in one place for a long time, that obviously is a good idea, but makes it harder because then you have to choose the right country. My concept always was perpetual traveling. So you don't have a tax residency, you just commute between multiple countries. I do it very extreme. I've been to every country in the world. I often change places every 2-3 days. So that might be bad for business if you do it wrong. However, most people can do the same lifestyle with the same advantages by having 2 or 3 countries where they just change. In many cases, even have a fixed home rented or even property, and then it's much easier doable as an entrepreneur. And then you practically don't need a tax residency, but that's very dependent on your past residency and your citizenship. So for some countries, for example, if you're Spanish and go out of Spain, Spain won't acknowledge your exit until you prove them a new tax residency. Otherwise, you stay taxed in Spain. In Germany, luckily, it's different. At the moment, you don't need a new tax residency, so you can directly start under this perpetual travel lifestyle. So it really dependent. But if you speak about tax residencies, if you need it or if you want to, there's a lot of options. There's still over 60 countries in the world where you can essentially live tax-free because there's no income taxes or foreign income isn't taxed, or there's some like special programs which exempt certain income. So for example, in Europe, many people go to Cyprus or other tax havens like Malta, Ireland, even countries like Spain, Greece, Portugal, Italy have special programs which basically make you tax-free. That's especially interesting for people who earn a lot of money. For example, you pay a 200,000 euro lump sum tax in Italy or 100,000 in Greece. Pay that once, the rest is tax-free foreign income. But for people who don't earn that much, most people generally go to Cyprus or Georgia. Very interesting because it's cheap, but a bit more expensive over the last years because it's very popular. But still, it's very cheap, and foreign income is completely tax-free. Or if they want to go further, I mean, many digital nomads don't have issues to go further around the world. People choose, for example, Paraguay, which basically have no immigration requirements. Just go there, get your temporary residency. Or Panama, Costa Rica, or Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, South Africa. There's a lot of options, and even if you want to live full time in a place, and if you don't want, basically every country can qualify up to a certain time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, very good perspective. I would like to address one by one is like I know Portugal is one of the locations. Let's start from the Europe, right? Like that people say. Where do you see advantages and disadvantages of the Portugal, and what is the actual program that Portugal has?
Yeah, Portugal unfortunately got much less attractive over the years. Until 2 years ago, they had the NHR program, non-habitual residence it's called. And back then it was pretty open. Almost everyone could use it and be exempt on certain foreign income for up to 10 years. And this was changed. The program is still possible, but like in the old form, only in the like remote regions, like Azores and Madeira. So if you move to Madeira or Azores, you can still use it pretty easily. But in mainland Portugal, only if you come from certain professions. There's a couple of tricks. If you are like a certain investor buying some shares of certified companies or starting an export company, you can still trick yourself into the regime. But generally, it's only for like high value professions Portugal wants to have coming to Lisbon and the other cities. So it's much more restricted and generally not that good idea for most nomads. But if you really want to live in Portugal, you can still make it happen. And then you are tax free on foreign dividends, for example. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. So that program still exists in Portugal, right? With the zero tax.
Yeah, like I said, it exists, but it's
Mhm.
much more restricted unless you move to the outer islands.
Got you. Where do you see like disadvantages also, maybe like from the lifestyle perspective, right? Like because like from the tax perspective, it's a little bit restrictive. And even though if somebody gets that, where do you see maybe like advantages and also disadvantages of living and managing the business from Portugal?
Yeah, I mean, one big question is always European Union, yeah, because if you go to Portugal, but even to tax havens like Cyprus, you still stay in the European Union, and this
Mhm.
unfortunately has a very centralist tendency, wants to introduce new taxes, new rules, new bureaucracy, and you will suffer even in those countries, even if those countries are relatively free. So this is a big risk. At the moment, EU still has a lot of advantages as well, not only disadvantages. But in my eyes, the disadvantages grow over time, and soon you will be like in a golden
Mm.
cage. Yeah. So this can be one thing. Can still visit the EU a couple of months a year as a traveler, no issue. But in my perspective, you shouldn't have your main residence in the European Union. And other
Y-
than that, I mean, lifestyle is very subjective, very individual. This is very hard to talk about. Yeah. I mean, everyone can be happy everywhere in my eyes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, which countries would you say, like, looking at the Europe, right? Like, what would you rate like number one country to move in terms of, managing the business and also like saving the taxes as well? That will be like more advantages.
I mean, we recently did a freedom ranking. We analyzed
Mhm.
235 countries and territories around the world, depending on specific criteria for like entrepreneurs. So, what's the freest country economically and also personally? And most European countries fared very bad. I think worst
Mm.
country in Europe was France. Second worst was Germany, and the best countries generally were in the Balkans or Georgia. Generally, Georgia is the best country if you consider that Europe. I mean, that's almost Asia, but Georgia is tax free on foreign income. It has very low taxes on local income. So even if you're a local entrepreneur doing services or goods in Georgia, you only pay 1% on the first 160,000 euros. And if you do like a bigger limited company, there is this retained taxation model. That means you pay 15%, but only on distribution. So as long as you keep the money within the company, reinvest it, etc., no taxes. And then Georgia is very efficient. I'm an investor in Georgia for a long time. 10 years ago, almost, I started a walnut plantation with local friends. And
Mhm.
the walnut plantation is now the biggest one in Georgia. We have a very big factory and so on. And the red tape is minimal still. Yeah, you can do business very easily there. It's one of the easiest places in the world to form a business. So that can still be a good option. Back then, it was even very cheap, great arbitrage to be had. Now, because a lot of Russians, Ukrainians, other people moved there, got more expensive, but still it's a good deal. And I mean, the lifestyle quality also got much bigger because of that.
Got you. Wow, that's very interesting. So, I know that in Georgia, like if the only thing is concern I heard, I'm not sure, that is banking, right? Like you don't have European banking or something, or is it not the deal as
Actually,
well?
banking is a big advantage of Georgia. It's one of
Okay.
our most popular products is banking in Georgia because it's
Mhm.
relatively easy to open remote bank accounts in Georgia, and the banks are pretty okay. The Georgian
Yep.
lari is quite a good currency in the last years, and
Mhm.
they are not in like the SEPA system, but they use
Yep.
IBANs, so it's still for typical Europeans relatively easy to get the money there. Until recently, they were not part of the CRS, so no information exchange. That changed now, but still, it's outside the scope of like EU CSIS, and yeah, it's generally a good choice. And like a private banking, what you know from Switzerland, where you need to put millions in a bank account, is available in Georgia from like 20,000 euros. So you get your personal banker, high interest over 10% in the right products. So overall, it's a pretty solid choice for nomads, because most nomads, including me, I have a Georgian account as well. They don't want to park hundreds of thousands of euros on certain bank accounts,
Yeah.
where other people manage your money. I want to invest my own money, do my own um, stock investments, crypto investments, whatever investments. So just having a nice account for transactions is great, where you don't need to put much money. And that there is Georgia is one of the best in my eyes.
Got you. Okay, that's very interesting. And like, where do you see disadvantages, like from your perspective, of course?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia, of course, has a geopolitical risk. Yeah, I mean, you have a big Russia as a neighbor. Luckily, there are 6,000-meter mountains in behind, but there were past aggressions of Russia. At the moment, it's not a big risk because Georgia politically is rather Russian friendly and EU anti, which can be seen as nice as well or not, depending how you see it. The other countries, of course, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, is all also risky. So this is a certain risk of Georgia. But I mean, if you don't really live there, or you just use it as a base for example, taxation, probably it's just not a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you recommend it for entrepreneurs who are also making like 100K and plus a month? Would you recommend still Georgia as well, or more like for digital nomads who make until 100K?
I mean, it's pretty irrelevant how much you make. You can use it with very
Okay.
little money because it's still sufficiently cheap. You can use it with a lot of money as well. But of course, the more money you have, the more other options you have. So if you say, oh, maybe I like to live in Italy because that's just maybe the best life quality in the world, and I pay 200,000 in tax, but after that I'm tax free. Yeah. If you earn only 1 million, 200,000 is like 20%, probably still too much. But if you earn 10 million, it's only 2% of your income. Then you might say, oh, okay, I moved to Italy. Yeah. So the more you earn, the more options you have. And generally, I would say from around 1 million in yearly income, you have all the options in the world.
Okay, nice. So what you mentioned, right? I saw it in one of your videos. You mentioned like it's 100,000 in a year. You pay like a fixed tax, and then you don't have to pay. Now it's 200,000, or how is that?
Yeah, it used to be 100, but Italy changed it to 200K. It's still 100, for example, in Greece. And there's countries like this in other European states as well. For example, Poland has it. Very interesting for many European entrepreneurs, especially also if they have like factories. Many German entrepreneurs relocate their factories to Poland because you have generally less corporate taxes, 9% in contrast to like 30%, a good, motivated, cheaper workforce, and so on. But even on the personal level, at the moment in Poland, you just pay 75K a year, so less. And from that 75K, around 25 is a donation to like local NGOs. So in effective tax, you pay maybe 50K to the Polish government, and then you're tax free on foreign income. Or Switzerland still has it. Switzerland is much more restrictive because you're not allowed to work. Within Italy, Greece, Poland, you can still work as an entrepreneur. But in Switzerland, basically, it's only passive dividends, capital gains. But it starts from, depending on the canton, around 80,000 euros. So also very interesting to move to Switzerland if you are retired and get a lot of money, for example.
Gotcha. So for each case is relative. Depends on what kind of lifestyle you have, what kind of situation you have. So for each situation, just briefly, those countries, who would you recommend? Let's say Switzerland, Italy, and Greece, those countries that you mentioned, or maybe like a different countries, like for example,
Yeah, I mean,
Spain or other.
these are all very like multifaceted countries, yeah, because they all have this lump sum tax for rich people, but they also have like, for example, special programs for retirees. For example, everyone getting a pension only pay 7% on the pension, and everything else, capital gains and so on, in Italy and Greece. And both countries have a program to attract freelancers. Yeah, freelancers moving to Italy only pay half of income tax for the first 5 years, for example. Yeah, and then of course you have the normal system. The normal system in all those countries isn't particularly good. It's a pretty bad European welfare state system, similar to Germany and Spain. But once you use the tax advantages, of course, if you can use it, it's very favorable. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, very interesting. I know about the Beckham law as well. Like, how is that in Spain?
Yeah, the Beckham law is pretty tricky, but generally you can be tax-free on foreign income for 6 years. If you move to Spain out of like professional purposes. So if you like form a local company, operate a restaurant or something, then you can still be exempt on tax on your other income.
Okay, it means like if I am, for example, if I move to Spain and I have this Beckham law, then in that case, like any income that is coming from other countries but not from Spain, from Spanish companies, means it's tax free.
Yes, but you really have to see that you have substance, so-called substance. That means not just having like a letterbox company somewhere else. That won't work. You really have to prove that the income is actually generated outside of Spain. So you have like employees or freelancers outside of Spain doing the work, and you have a director managing the decisions outside of Spain. Otherwise, Spain will argue it's still like local income.
Okay, so what is I heard that this Beckham law is 24%. Like, how is that calculated?
Well, the 24% is on local income. So everything which is considered local income, you have the 24% flat tax. But the real foreign income, foreign dividends, foreign capital gains is zero. Yeah, but it needs to be properly structured.
So what it means, like structured in terms of like first, who is this for? Because you said like there are some restrictions as well, and how it needs to be structured as well.
Yeah, like I said, you need to have substance. So you need a director, employees doing the work outside of Spain. If you're just a freelancer and doing everything inside of Spain, basically the Beckham law is worthless. Yeah. And there's a certain risk because Spain generally doesn't confirm you got a status, and then retroactively they often try to audit it and try to strip you from it. So there's already a couple of cases where people basically had to pay a lot of taxes. Yeah. So it's like not a really secure program to use.
You mean like if you move to Spain and have your office there and your employees, then it's not going to work, right? You need to have employees in another countries as well, like directors, etc. That's what you mean, or?
Yes, the minimum a director, but generally it's better to prove that some of the work you provide is done outside of Spain as well. Yeah.
Also outside of Spain, yeah, it makes a little bit more, a little bit more restrictive, yeah, for sure. So
for
what
like
are the
typical freelancers, typical digital nomads, it's not suitable. Yeah, then go to Georgia or go to Paraguay or Panama or to low tax countries in Europe, for example, Bulgaria, where you pay 10% income tax. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you will have your team actually in Spain, let's say you have like 5-6 people and you all work from there, then in that case it will be like 24%, right? But your income is coming from outside, even though you need to pay, or you are not qualified at all for Beckham law then?
Yes, I mean, it can still make sense because you need to qualify for Beckham law first. And this is basically be done by showing local professional activity. So by having a Spanish startup, you can qualify for Beckham law, but on that you pay these taxes. Yeah, local corporate tax and 24% income tax. But on everything else, your foreign entities, dividends, capital gains, then you're tax free. And that's the main advantage. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. What other countries do you consider good also in terms of taxes in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, most of the Balkans is interesting. I already mentioned Bulgaria, but all the other countries, especially the non-EU countries, for example, Serbia or Bosnia or Macedonia, can be all very interesting as they have relatively low taxes, around 10 to 15%. And they have the tax treaties with all the other countries are relatively cheap. So especially for scaling certain businesses, those can be very valuable. Romania still got a bit worse the last years, can also be interesting, for example. So.
Okay. What about Cyprus?
Yeah, Cyprus is one of the most popular options for my clients as well, because Cyprus basically gives tax residency by other criteria than normal. Generally, you need to live half a year in a country to get tax residency. In Cyprus, you are tax resident already after 2 months if you have certain
Mhm.
requirements like forming a local company and paying into local social security. And this is very nice because many people want to actually be nomads, but don't want to stay more than half a year in a place. So they do the 2 months in Cyprus, and then they can do two times 5 months in other countries, for example, but still have their tax certificate to get out of Spanish taxation, for example, or use the tax certificate for other things they need.
If somebody lives in Cyprus, let's say freelancer moving to Cyprus, like how will be calculated the tax in that case?
Well, if you use this non-dom regime, basically you have to form a Cyprus company, pay into social security, local health insurance, have the cost for the Cyprus company. Generally, this costs you around 10K a year altogether, plus a local flat. You need to have a rental contract for 12 months. So 10K plus local flat will give you this tax advantages. Tax advantages mean you're completely tax-free on dividends and interest. Capital gains are tax-free anyway. So basically, you pay 50% on the corporate level, Cyprus Limited, and nothing on the personal level. And if you want, you can optimize that. There's a lot of options still in Cyprus. Cyprus is much less restrictive than high-tech countries like Germany and Spain. So you can have an offshore company, for example, legally while living in Cyprus, and then have a total taxation of zero.
Okay, zero tax also in Cyprus. Okay, that's very interesting though. Where do you see disadvantages of Cyprus as well? Like maybe like living or running business itself?
Yeah, I mean, I already said the thing about the European Union. It also applies to Cyprus. But one thing, for example, which is not so nice for many people, Cyprus introduced a crypto taxation. So they didn't say crypto is capital gains, which are tax-free. They said it's something else, and now we do 8% tax on crypto. It's not terribly high, but it's a tax, and it's not so attractive for like crypto people anymore. That could be
Okay.
a thing. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, Cyprus just made the big tax reform, and it's actually good. Generally, if you're not using this non-dom scheme, you paid 17% on dividends, but they just changed it to 5%. So even Cypriot citizens or people not taking advantage of the scheme now pay very little taxes on their business profits. In Cyprus,
Mhm.
even if your non-dom scheme runs out after 17 years, you still have only 5% tax. So it's basically not a big
Okay.
deal.
So it means after certain amount of years, just to understand, because like what does it mean at 5%? When is this
But
starting?
the non-dom scheme in Cyprus has a term of 17 years. After 17 years, you cannot use it anymore.
Ah, okay.
But then you're not
Okay.
tax-free on dividends anymore, but then it's only 5% after the tax reform. So not a big change.
So 17 years you can enjoy your life and get advantages, but after that it will be 5%. Okay, that's very interesting. I think the same is also for Spain, right? Like for Beckham law, it's also there is a certain amount of years
Yeah,
you
it's
have
only 6 years. It's only 6 years, which is much more restrictive.
6 years, and then after that it's normal. I think 48% or something, right? In Spain.
Yeah,
Okay.
Spain gets very high very quickly, and it's definitely not a good place for building up your wealth. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the lifestyle, just from my perspective, because I know like Cyprus, for example, is an island. When you need like delivery from Amazon, you need to wait like 2 weeks. But in Spain, it's relatively like within the EU, and everything is more available as well. Like those restrictions you see as well, kind of as well between the countries.
Yeah, of course, this can be relevant for many people. But again, you don't need to live in one country for all your life. You can live up to half a year in Spain, even in your own finca, without any issues. That doesn't make you taxable. So just go to Spain, live there, but only for half a year, and then maybe choose another nice country for the other half, and you can still have all the advantages, lifestyle, without paying unnecessary taxation. Yeah.
So these years that you said, like in terms of Italy and Greece, they also have those years restrictions, or not really?
I don't know what you mean. I mean, generally, up to half a year, you can stay in those countries without triggering anything. The nice
No,
thing
no. I
about
mean,
Spain,
you
Italy,
mentioned
Greece is,
years.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned 6 years is in Spain, right? Like after 6 years, you pay normal taxes.
yeah, this is
Does
just a
Italy?
scheme. This is the special scheme. Every scheme has different terms. Balkan law
Mhm.
6 years, Cyprus non-dom 17 years, Italy often 10 years. Depends on what we're speaking about.
Okay, okay, great. What other countries in Europe you like? Maybe like we didn't mention yet. I know, by the way, it's maybe not exactly Europe, but Turkey has a new rule about taxation. I don't know if you heard about that as well.
Yeah, I heard about it, of course. It's just news for a couple of days and it's
Yeah.
still not law, but it will probably, in my eyes, very likely become law this year. So then it will be 20 years of tax freedom on foreign income for people moving there. Generally, there's always a rule, I think, in Turkey is you shouldn't have lived in Turkey for the last 3 years. And you have this rule in many of the other countries we discussed already as well. It's always like the pre-requirement. You can use it as a citizen, but only if you're out of the country for a certain time. Yeah, I always call these countries the so-called cuckold states because they basically tax their citizens living there to death, but everyone who's outside or every foreigner can use a lot of advantages moving there. And of course, Turkey, if they making it, and I think they will be very attractive. It's a perfect alignment, perfect initiative to get all the people escaping from Dubai, and this will be a big boom for Turkey. I'm sure. Yeah,
And it is 0% as well, right? For Turkey.
it's not confirmed yet, but it probably will be 0% on foreign income. Yeah.
It means anybody, same like we countries we discussed, right? Like you move like a freelancer or company owner to Turkey and you just pay 0% and there are no restrictions or anything? Or how does it look like?
Yeah, it's all speculation because it's not law yet. Yeah, we don't know how the law will
Okay.
look like, but generally, if you compare it to other countries, it will probably be pretty flexible. No tax on foreign income. You still
Yeah.
might to prove some substance like foreign management or something like that. But I don't expect very high like
Mhm.
entry barriers. So for most normals, even freelancers can be probably a good solution. Yeah.
Great, great. In terms of Monaco, you mentioned a couple times as well in Europe. Like how about those countries? Monaco, Andorra, smaller countries.
Yeah, I mean, they're all very different. Monaco can be very interesting. Most people think they need to be multi-millionaire to move there. That's actually not true. If you can afford like this lump sum taxation in Italy, you can already afford Monaco as well. And then you're completely tax-free without paying a single dime. You just need to afford a rental there. Yeah, rentals start from like 3,000-4,000 euros for a very small apartment. And you need to pay around 500,000 in a local bank account. That's everything you need to move to Monaco. And Andorra and Liechtenstein, they all have different immigration rules. Andorra is not completely tax-free. You pay around 10% there, but it's relatively easy to move there as well. And Liechtenstein is very hard to move to, also not tax-free. You pay around 8% there. So there's a lot of these little states as well. Could be interesting, but they have higher entry requirements than like the EU states where you have basically freedom to settle as an EU citizen. Yeah.
You mentioned in one of
So
your videos that Monaco, you just pay like 80K or 100K and then you can be in the country and you can live there, like one-time payment. How does it look like? Now it's 500,000, right? They changed it.
no, it used to be always 500,000 on a bank account, but there's certain exemptions. Like for example, you can form a Monaco company and only put 150K in a local bank account and still get residencies. So even if you don't have the liquidity, you can still make it if you really want to live there.
Oh,
However, I
this
mean, you have to understand Monaco has a very strict minimum presence. You really need to live there for 90 days on the territory of Little Monaco. Otherwise, you are kicked out again, basically.
So if you have 150K, just put it into your bank account, move to Monaco, stay at least 90 days, and you're fine with the 0% tax as well.
Yes, it needs to be like a local asset management company. Yeah, It's basically an asset management company, like a family office, where you put 150K and put it in the right assets, and then you get a ticket into Monaco if you want.
What does it mean, like family assets? I'm not really technical into details. So what does it mean actually?
Just asset management company, yeah.
Okay.
What you do normally with stocks, with crypto, with gold, with other investments, you just do over a Monaco company. The company is managing your wealth, and then you don't need 500K, you only need 150K. That's like the trick, the hack for Monaco. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. What about like Nordic countries? I know Scandinavian countries might potentially have some also advantages as well, or not really?
I mean, I like those countries to travel, but as a resident, they're deadly. Yeah, in many of those countries, you pay a combination
Christoph?
of 60-70% of direct taxes.
Okay, so those Scandinavian countries are only for traveling?
No, the Scandinavian countries are not good for paying taxes, at least, because in many cases you pay 60-70% on direct taxes if you live there. So generally, those countries are good up to half a year, but not longer. And they might offer other advantages in like other flags, for example, privacy for operating servers, or like freedom of speech or things like that, but generally not good for companies or for tax residency. Yeah.
Okay, got you. I heard about Ireland as well. That one of the good options in the Europe. Like, do you see it as a good option as well?
Yeah, Ireland is it's not popular, but it's a pretty good option. So it has a similar system to Malta, so-called remittance-based taxation. That means you basically only have to pay tax on your local living costs, and everything else which remained outside of the country is invested outside of the country, spent outside the country, is tax-free. So you
Yeah.
maybe wire 2,000 euros a month to Ireland, pay local taxes on that, and the rest is tax-free. So most people choose to go to Southern Europe for lifestyle reasons. They don't like the weather in Ireland, I guess. But Ireland is still a pretty undervalued solution.
Okay. So for type of entrepreneur who wants to save money and doesn't matter like where you live at all, like I mean a lot, then it is a good option as well.
Can be a good option, especially for families in my eyes. But also in
Okay.
those countries, Ireland, Malta, you have to really say you need like a foreign company with local management, with local employees. Just having like your letterbox LLC doesn't help. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, and if you have a local company, again, it's not only the local corporate tax, then it's considered inland income, and the tax advantages don't work anymore. So you always need the right structure for those countries.
Got you. What are the outside of these countries that we discussed in Europe, like you find also good? Maybe we didn't mention yet.
Yeah, one good country could be Latvia. Latvia is a kind of Nordic country, you can say, with 0% on dividends. But this 0% only apply on dividends of European Union companies. But if you have the right combination, for example, Malta 5%, tax-free dividends in Latvia, that could be interesting. And then it always depends, of course, on how you generate income. If you, for example, just living off stocks of capital gains, then many European countries get attractive. For example, Belgium has the highest income tax, 55%, but is tax-free on capital gains. So the right people live tax-free in Belgium. And the same is true in Luxembourg, in the Netherlands, still at the moment, in Switzerland, in many other countries. Capital gains are highly like rewarded. Yeah.
Okay. For those people who want to have amazing lifestyle and also at the same time have a digital business and manage it, what countries would you highlight in the world globally that can be a good option to move?
Yeah, I mean, in our freedom ranking, I already mentioned the top three is Prospera, which is like a free city, it's called. It's part of Honduras, of the island of Roatan, but it's completely autonomous in terms of taxes and law. So people can move there. They can move next door to El Salvador, which is very interesting. Just recently relaxed the rules on residency. So pretty easy to get residency by just staying 90 days there. And tax-free on foreign income, especially great for crypto businesses. Paraguay, I already mentioned, same with Costa Rica and Panama. They're all very free systems. Foreign income is tax-free. and immigration is relatively straightforward. So if you base yourself there, you have a lot of opportunities. And then, of course, international countries. Philippines is often undervalued because it's very cheap and has very good advantages as well. But also other Asian countries like Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, whatever offer good things. And even the like wealthier countries like China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, South Korea. Basically, in the first couple of years in those countries, we always tax free. That's a very nice bonus. Maybe many people don't know about.
Awesome, awesome. And those countries that you mentioned, like different regions, right? And the ranking that you have, is it possible also to share with the audience? Like, I mean, if you have it like a list, so to have a little bit more detailed overview.
Yeah, I mean, you can happily link our freedom ranking down below. Because we have a graphic interface, it's in English. People can just, and that's very important, like determine their own factors, what they find important. Yeah, it's all like hard data. It's quantifiable data, and they can say, I really taxes are very important for me, but other things in the ranking is not so important for me, and then the ranking might change. Yeah, so just link it, and then people can make their own calculations. What's the freest
Yeah.
country for them subjectively? Yeah.
Of course, awesome. There are lots of entrepreneurs who have international structure where they save taxes. Like for example, one company in Hong Kong, one company in UK, another company in US. So and then they manage between the companies to save the taxes. Like how this structure in general works.
Yeah, I mean, really dependent on your business model. Yeah, the best you can do is to live in one country and have your company in another country. Generally, I always find it wise to not have everything in the same country. Yeah. So you are much more legally safe if your company is in another country than you live in, and maybe your clients again in another country. For example, you live in Panama, have an American company, and have your clients in Germany. That's like how I do it, and that's the legally most sound. If you do business in the same country you live in, that can invite problems. For example, you live in Dubai, you have a local business, and in Dubai, in many cases, you get a lot of issues if like your business fails, if you get debt and things like that. It can be very problematic. So of course, sometimes it's not possible otherwise. But if you can work digitally, separate it. That's like the core tenet of the fact theory. Separate your life aspects into different countries.
Okay, so just to reduce the risk to have different companies in different countries, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of like the Dubai itself, like is it not attractive anymore, or is it like a temporary thing? Like how do you see the Dubai right now?
I think Dubai is still attractive for the right people, but there's a lot of competition, especially now with Turkey and all the other things I mentioned. And most people are not aware of those options, so they just know about Dubai and move to Dubai. Dubai, in my eyes, is still good if you have enough money as a family or as a professional. But there's a lot of alternatives. And I mean, it's a big city, and they did many things right in the last years. Now they suffer. In my eyes, it's not that bad. I was just in Dubai a couple of days last week, and it's still, even when the drones are coming from Iran, it's still safer than most Western cities. Yeah, because the chance to be hit by a drone is basically zero, and the local security is very, very high, much higher than anywhere else in Europe and so on. So still, the promise of security is very strong, and many people who live in Dubai actually value Dubai even more because, I mean, Dubai got a threat tag much more than Israel, for example, yeah. And they're very grateful that their country defended them. So Dubai, in my eyes, has lots of disadvantages as well, especially like the legal situation in the country can be very problematic if you do the wrong things, and you can easily do the wrong things, even if you think you are nice and legal. But other than that, I think it can still be a very good option. Yeah.
The only disadvantage also, would you say it's expenses in Dubai, or do you see anything else as well beyond that?
Yeah, the main issue is that it gets much more bureaucratic. Yeah, I got like Dubai residency myself 5 years ago. Back then, it was still without corporate tax, without accounting. It was basically a paradise for entrepreneurs. But shortly after it changed, you have a 9% corporate tax from certain thresholds, accountings, audit, and you see a worrying like development of more and more bureaucracy and rules and laws, which makes it not so nice anymore. Yeah, I mean, for some people, for some industries, it might be good to have these rules, but generally, as a digital entrepreneur, you just move somewhere else because it's too restrictive. Yeah.
Yeah. Now people from Dubai, they are moving from to Singapore and other countries, I heard as well, right? Is it happening? Like, how do you see that, the movement?
Yeah, I mean, Dubai always had the advantage that it has relatively easy immigration options as well. Just start a local company, sponsor a visa, and then you're a resident. Other countries make it much harder. For example, in Singapore, basically, you can only live there by starting a local company with a very high salary, not just having a company, but paying a high salary from the company and actually living there for half a year. While Dubai, for a long time, had the rule you just have to visit every 6 months. So it was also a very good residency for nomads because most people don't want to live in Dubai during the summer anyway. Yeah.
And in terms of like LLC, like managing the LLC, right? Let's say one of the European countries, would you recommend to having US LLC as well? Like how LLC in general works?
Yeah, the LLC is basically an American company, but you don't pay taxes in the US. You pay taxes where you're resident. It's a so-called tax transparent company. It's called disregarded entity for federal tax purposes in the US. The name already says it. So if you are tax-free because you are a perpetual traveler or you live in a tax-free country, also the LLC is tax-free. But it basically requires you live in a tax-free country like Georgia or Panama or Thailand. With that, it works. If you live in countries in Europe like Malta, for example, or Ireland, it still works, but you need to prove that the income is actually generated outside with employees, with directors outside of the country. Yeah. If you live in Germany where you have a high income tax, you will pay this high income tax on LLC. So there, the LLC doesn't really work. It can still have certain advantages, but generally it's only for people who emigrated to the right countries. Yeah.
Would that work for Spain? Let's say with this 24% for LLC, and that structure can work there for with the 0%?
It can work. Our clients used to use it for Spanish backend law. However, there were recent changes, and now it got very tricky with non-EU companies. So generally, we recommend combining backend law, for example, with a company in Malta with 5%, and not a 0% LLC option.
Okay. What happens when you move, let's say, like LLC company you have in which countries you can use LLC, by the way, in Europe? You would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, in Europe it's difficult because in most European countries you pay income taxes, or you have like controlled foreign company rules. So basically, it's prohibited or made harder to have foreign companies. So generally, you can use the LLC with Monaco. You can use it with those lump sum tax regimes we discussed. You can use it very well with Georgia. Yeah, I mean, Georgia is still the best solution. Just a residency in Georgia, and you can use even a letterbox LLC without substance, without issues.
And let's say you live in Georgia, you have this 0% tax, and you have your LLC, right? So then, what is requirement to prove that also like the income is generated outside of the Georgia? Would that be that case?
In theory, yes, but in practice, in Georgia, no one asks about it. Yeah.
No one
So
asks.
Georgia
Okay.
really is completely free about it. In Malta and Ireland, you will probably need to prove it, but Georgia doesn't care. And completely income tax, we can't do say Monaco don't care either. Yeah.
So Monaco or Georgia then for that case is better, as I understand, right?
For Europe, yes.
For Europe.
I mean, you can still pay little taxes, but then often you need to have other companies, yeah, or local companies in that regard in Europe. For example, you live in Bulgaria, you pay 10% tax, corporate tax, and then you pay 5% on dividends. And it's a very easy and cheap jurisdiction to set up. So if you're fine paying a little bit of taxes, those Eastern European countries can be very interesting, for example.
Okay. And if you have, like, let's say LLC in Georgia, and then you move to Dubai or Thailand or somewhere else, what happens in that case? You need to close that LLC and then move to country and open another LLC, or how does it work?
No, generally, you can keep the same LLC. It depends if your country has exit taxes, which might trigger something on the LLC. But generally, tax-free countries don't have exit taxes, so you can just still use the LLC in the new country. It's a company separate from yourself, and of course, you can continue to use it.
So this is mostly Monaco and Georgia, right? In Europe that have zero tax and tax free, or also Portugal
You
or
can
other
still
countries.
use the LLC in Cyprus, but it's a bit more tricky because the LLC cannot issue dividends, and only dividends are tax-free in Cyprus. But we have many clients in Cyprus with the LLC. So what they have to do, they have to put another offshore company into the LLC, which then basically can distribute the dividend to Cyprus. So, for example, we use a lot of Seychelles companies for that.
Okay, interesting. Do those countries also have like minimum stay time, like let's say Georgia or Monaco or other countries like that have good attractive taxes, like
Yeah, I mean,
minimum?
there's always the question for what. Yeah, there's minimum stay times for residency. For example, in Monaco, 3 months. Otherwise, you cannot be considered resident. Georgia, for example, doesn't have a minimum stay time per se. You just need to visit like once a year to renew your temporary residency. But if you want tax residency, you need to stay there 183 days. Other than that, it's just a residency permit. Yeah. For example, I have multiple residency permits in Panama, Paraguay, Dubai, and so on, but I'm not considered tax resident because I'm not living there. Yeah. In order to be considered tax resident, you need to stay in many countries for half a year, or at least have like a long-term rental contract, local flat, family living there, and so on and so on. Georgia is very interesting because you can get this tax residency without any residency as well. There's a couple of countries having special things like that, but for that you need to be invested in Georgia very highly. You need to have a local investment like real estate, $500,000, and this gives you then basically a tax residency without being there. So for certain purposes, Georgia could be very interesting if you're rich enough.
So it means if you just buy an apartment or real estate, right? Like in Georgia, then after that you can live in Spain or Italy or somewhere and still be considered tax resident in Georgia, or you still need to stay 6 months there?
Yes, but of course, if you live more than half a year in Italy or Spain, that doesn't help you. Then Spain or Italy will try to tax you, and
Yeah.
then the tax certificate of Georgia becomes worthless. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tax certificate can be useful, for example, for using tax treaties. You can get special advantages of tax treaties, and as a perpetual traveler without any residency, you cannot use this treaties. But with the Georgian solution, you can and still be flexible internationally.
Okay, that's interesting. What are the outside, like in Latin America or in other countries like or Asia? Like what other options do you see also like attractive for, especially for digital entrepreneurs who have already some wealth as well? Like is not like like a freelancer itself.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed quite a lot of countries in Latin America already, and in Asia, one interesting country for many is South Africa, because South Africa is done right, also completely tax-free on foreign income for the first 5 years. And for example, with proving that you just have 700K in stocks or other assets, you get permanent residency. Yeah, you just have to show it. Fly there, take a lawyer, we can provide one, and you get permanent residency. So South Africa, for example, is a good solution on that continent. Or the islands like Mauritius, Seychelles also offer very attractive things. And yeah, I mean, spoke a bit about Asia. Of course, there's lots of other islands, especially in the Caribbean and the Pacific, which are often completely tax-free on income. For example, I bought the passport of Vanuatu. I'm not only German citizen, I'm also Vanuatu citizen. There's around 25 countries at the moment which sell their citizenship. for a certain donation or investment. So I bought a Vanuatu passport for around 130K in Bitcoin, 130K dollars in Bitcoin 2 years ago, and now I'm a Vanuatu citizen as well. For example, I can now travel visa-free to Russia, which I can't with a German passport. And I'm much more protected if Germany turns more totalitarian and wants to steal my passport or do other things. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of like 0%, which countries would you recommend in general? Like other that we didn't discuss maybe like or didn't mention about 0%?
Well, I mean, we've discussed so many countries already. There's a couple of other ones, like in Central America, like Guatemala, Belize, Dominican Republic, all the Caribbean countries, especially the overseas territories of UK, for example, Cayman Islands, BVIs, Bermuda. But that's generally not so interested for people to live there because they're very expensive and they're small islands. Yeah, so most people choose to rather go to bigger countries which are not islands. Yeah.
And Paraguay in Latin America, you said more countries, right? These are also completely tax free.
Yeah, Paraguay is the gold standard because it's tax-free on foreign income, 10% on local income, very easy to emigrate. Other countries, well, I mean, Uruguay, this is often called, but it recently changed their rules and now got much more unattractive. Argentina is on a good way, but at the moment, the old taxation rules remain and they're not so attractive. Chile is tax-free in the first 3 years. That could be interesting for certain people. And then it has fair taxes. Other countries like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, they have a very bad aggressive taxation, not only income taxes, but wealth taxes, transaction taxes, things like that. So they're not considered that good.
Okay. So and those countries, do you see any disadvantages of moving to those countries?
Yeah, I mean, it's always subjective disadvantages. If you can make it to move there, Latin America often has a big problem with crime. And that really depends on the country and how you see it and where you move to, of course. And in Asia, maybe you have less crime, but more pollution. So really, really depends what's important for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only disadvantage you would say is that in terms of I know the time zone is very good for US, for example, right? But also the rules and everything is like in Paraguay or other countries, I assume is not also super highly regulated as well, right? Or how does it
Yeah,
look like?
some countries you can do what you want as an entrepreneur. For example, in Paraguay, until recently, there was not even a punishment for tax evasion. Yeah. So basically, I heard a story where like all the national football team evaded taxes, but they couldn't be punished. They basically had to name and shame them in a local newspaper. And this also applies to many, many other parts of doing business. There are just no rules. So that can be a disadvantage, but it can be for many people a big advantage as well. And just generally, it's always risky to do local businesses in such countries. But if you just live there, have your American company with like very clear legal standards and do business with that internationally, you're pretty well off. Yeah.
So it means like if you move to Paraguay, you have your LLC and you manage with 0% and there is no exit tax as well. Totally fine. You can live like 3 to 5 years and then move on, or how does it look like?
Yeah, for example, I mean, you don't have to choose a country forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be there for a couple of years or a couple of months or a couple of decades and then move on. Yeah, of course, some countries like in Europe have high exit taxes, but they're not triggered immediately. Generally, in Europe, most countries need to stay there for 7 years, and only after 7 years, a local exit tax will begin to start. So even in Europe, you can stay temporarily in a couple of countries without issues.
Yeah. I know lots of people love especially the idea of like, living in one country for a while and then moving to another country just to explore also different different cultures. I know you also have kind of that lifestyle where you travel different countries and run the business as well. So for those people, like especially, what structure would you recommend to pay attention when it comes to trying different regions of the world and traveling and running the business?
Yeah, like I said, be a perpetual traveler. Just less than half a year in most countries will qualify. And then if your business model is right, the US LLC generally is one of the best solutions because it's easy to form, it's very cheap, and basically no rules, no bureaucracy, good bank accounts, good recognition. So even if you have clients, business clients from highly regulated countries like Germany or something, you can easily invoice them with the LLC. For some business models, it's not right. For example, if you have an e-commerce company selling physical goods into the European Union, it's better to have a EU company. Or if you are holding shares in like European startups, it's better to have it, for example, in Cyprus. But for most digital nomads, most typical freelancers, the LLC is the best option to start.
So the only option needs to be like you need to know that that country has 0% tax, and then only then you is with your LLC without closing it or paying the tax exit tax, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, always depends where you have clients. Yeah, for example, in Germany, there's a special rule on freelancers. If you do freelance work locally, like for example, you're IT developer and have IT clients and you have to work on German territory, this is always taxable with a LLC. Then you need another corporate structure to do these clients. And other countries have similar rules. If you do work locally in special countries, there's often withholding taxes. And there's always a tax due if you cannot prove that you taxed your money somewhere else. So it's a lot of different facets. It's not only relevant where you are living or where your company is based, also where the customer is, where the work is actually performed, and so on and so on.
Let's say your clients are from US. In that case, I mean, the only thing is like 0% needs to be locally so that you can move with the without exit tax and stuff, or it needs to be well researched as well.
Yeah, I mean, exit tax, where exit taxes apply, they can also be circumvented. You can do the right structure or start the right businesses, and then you don't have an exit tax. Yeah. So this
Mhm.
is part of my daily work, navigating around the exit taxes in countries like Germany and Austria.
Where do you get that knowledge as well? Let's say something new comes up or something you don't know, for example. Like, how do you actually learn all of this information?
Yeah, I mean, the news are not that bad. Obviously, something changes every day. But I have a big network of like tax advisors and lawyers and brokers in every relevant country. And if something important changes, I will be notified. And then I'm part of many newsletters of AI updates and so on. So this keeping track of changes isn't that hard. It's much more important to really grasp all the connections, to really understand the field of international taxation. And most people don't do that. Even most tax advisors don't really know about how things work, especially how, like, for example, tax treaties between countries work. And you really need to understand that in order to
Yeah.
provide the best guidance for clients. Yeah.
So for I know that within US as well, like if you are living in Germany or Spain or whatever, right, other outside of US, and you still to US, still sell to US for different states. There is different sales tax as well. So what is your perspective on that? Is it there some tax or is it only for local?
No, I mean, sales tax is always relevant, but only for physical products. So if you have an e-commerce business selling to the US, you will have to charge sales tax up from certain thresholds, certain profit or revenue thresholds, or if you have like a local um, warehouse, for example, then sales tax is always due. But if you just provide services to US clients, there is no sales tax. And there can be an income tax. For example, if you are a software developer again and you work on US territory for a US client, there will be income tax on that work. But if you perform the work remotely, there won't be income tax. Yeah. So the US is basically work on US territory, it will be taxed. Don't work on US territory, it won't be taxed.
Okay, interesting because I heard exactly opposite that people say even though you sell consulting services, there is a certain threshold for US, and after that threshold, you still need to pay sales tax.
Not for consulting services. Maybe in
Not
some
for
states
consulting.
like California, which are super aggressive, but in most countries, most states it's not like that.
Okay. Is it same also for Canada, for example, as well? Like there is a sales tax too, right? Like if you are outside, living outside and selling to Canada?
Generally, yes, but it's always a question about enforcement as well. I mean, some big
Mhm.
countries like US, Canada, Australia have kind of those rules, but even they have a very hard time enforcing them. So for certain things like physical goods is easier because the entrance of physical goods is controlled by customs, and they can force like platforms and payment providers to request maybe a tax ID, and without tax ID you cannot sell. But for like digital things or services, it's basically impossible to control and enforce it. So that's why most countries don't even try
Mhm.
to do that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So, you mentioned that US LLC makes sense if you are outside of the country, right? And you want to get like 0% tax. Do you see any other advantages of having US LLC?
Yeah, I mean, the main advantage is have access to the US financial markets, US banking,
Mhm.
US brokerages, and so on. Especially US credit cards. Yeah, if you use US credit cards, you collect a lot of points. You can exchange to flights and hotels and so on. And point system in the US is 4 times as strong as, for example, in Germany and most other countries. And actually, you can get a credit score and access to US credit cards without being resident there. It's a bit tricky. You need like a local tax number, local address, and so on. But it's possible to basically use the US as part of your liquidity strategy, get loans, get credit cards, and get a lot of advantages through that. So that's one important part why many clients also use the US LLCs.
Okay, that's very interesting too. So, I see mostly like people that are digital nomads or digital entrepreneurs. They are either going to Europe or a little bit to Asia. Would you say like most popular? What would be like most popular places where digital entrepreneurs typically go?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends what they want to do. Yeah, do they want
Yeah.
to scale the startup for exit? Then maybe the LLC is not the right structure. Then they maybe go to Switzerland or to other countries where they have very good work environment to scale a local startup and still sell it basically tax free. For example, in Switzerland, capital gains of sale of shares is tax free. But if it can be done remotely, if they have a global team of digital nomads, for example, yeah, they can basically be everywhere, base themselves in very attractive countries, and for example, have the US LLC. And this is possible with employees as well if it's structured properly. Yeah.
From the future perspective, like especially for companies that have online presence and can be everywhere, like you mentioned. So, from the future perspective, what countries do you think would be the best for the next 5 years or so, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I think still the US positions itself very well, and I don't see any like negative changes coming. So be it you're a freelancer or be it a big company, and you can of course also change between like the opportunities of the system. You can start with a tax-free LLC, but at some point maybe start to pay taxes, but then get a lot of local investment and exit the company with a high multiple after a time. Yeah. So this is very flexible there. In Europe, it's more countries like Switzerland, for example, or the tax havens like Malta and Cyprus, which are also interesting for local startups and entrepreneurs building like nice products. Huh?
Yeah. So with the Spain especially, like it makes no sense to open the LLC at all, right? You have 0% anyway when your income is coming outside of the country in that case.
Were you in Spain?
Yeah, for this Beckham law.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a LLC then, you can have any other company, but I mean, the LLC is tax free on corporate level. Yeah, like a Swiss company still pays around 11% in the best
Mhm.
canton on corporate level. So it really depends. I mean, some people rather make a compromise in a like more recognized country, Yeah, especially when many conservative clients want like a EU company, then maybe you make that compromise, pay a little bit in tax, and then but get better revenue, for example. But for others, pay no tax, maybe have a little less recognition. Really depends on your business.
Yeah. So it means for Spain, you cannot have local clients as well to be for eligible for the Beckham law, or you can still have local clients, but you will pay just local taxes then.
Yeah, you actually need a local company unless you're employed. This is also qualifies you for Beckham law. But generally, the qualification for Beckham law is you have a local company, you pay local taxes. On company level, you pay local taxes on your salary. But then everything else, you still have somewhere else is tax free.
And you can have local clients, local companies that are, I mean, clients as a client.
Yeah, of course, but with your local company, so you will have to pay taxes on that.
Yeah, yeah. With your local company, let's say you closed a client from Spain that is resident also in Spain. So then, in that case, because you mentioned income needs to come outside of the Spain, I'm just trying to understand how it works.
Yeah,
So the question,
like I said, if you have Spanish clients, you have to pay taxes on them. If you want to use the advantages of the scheme, you will have to have additional clients outside of Spain.
okay, got you. Then for the local, it will be local tax, right? For the Spanish.
Local will always be local tax, yeah.
Okay, okay, got you. When it makes sense to open UK company for tax advantages.
Well, a normal limited doesn't have big tax advantages. It still pays its 19-20% corporate tax. There is no withholding tax on dividends, so especially UK is a very good holding structure to hold shares in other countries. For example, if you have a Spanish company or a German company, you don't only have corporate tax, you have also called withholding tax on distribution of dividends. But if you hold it over limited in England, often this withholding tax is reduced to zero over the tax treaties, and then you can get your dividends tax free from the limited. Other than that, the UK also has a similar structure than LLC, just in basically every English-speaking country has that, but it's often called LP or LLP, limited liability partnership. So works same principle. If you are tax-free, live in the right country, the LLP is tax-free as well. Disadvantage to the LLC is you have like accounting, audit of the accounting, more regulations. But if for some reason LLC doesn't work, the English LP or Cyprus LP, for example, could be a good alternative. We do a lot of Cyprus LPs, same principle for e-commerce, for example, because with LLC it's very hard to get tax numbers in Europe, but with the Cyprus one it's very easy again, and you're completely tax-free on Amazon or dropshipping to Europe as well then, for example.
Okay, so I see many consulting companies also have the US LLC and UK LP. So just trying to understand why is this the case when it has advantages?
Yeah, I mean, it's very market specific, yeah.
Mhm.
And often, I mean, most people don't have the knowledge, and they just form what they think is best, not which is actually best. Yeah.
Okay, so you don't actually see advantages because I see some people say like having UK entity is good for local clients. If you have a lot of European clients, it's just more trust and it's just easier in terms of bureaucracy. But I'm not sure if it's right.
Well, now after Brexit, there's not really a point in UK limited partnerships anymore. Maybe a Cyprus partnership or Ireland partnership that
Ireland.
could still work. But island partnerships are very complex. With Cyprus is a bit easier, but then of course it's tax haven again. So yeah, I have some clients where it's relevant, where the clients say there is no laws on it, but the clients say I only accept EU companies. So you need a EU company. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. When it makes sense to create a Hong Kong entity, by the way, how about Hong Kong itself?
I'm not a big fan of Hong Kong in my eyes. It doesn't make sense at all. Um, Many people still use it for e-commerce since they source their products from China. But even their LLC or other structures are generally better. Yeah, I mean, Hong Kong can still be completely tax free, but the big issue is always banking, and it's very hard to get proper bank accounts for a Hong Kong company.
I see, I see. What are your favorite countries? I know you travel a lot, right? Like how many countries you have been so far?
I've been to every country in the world, every territory in the world, so to speak. I'm in like the top 10 rankings of travelers worldwide.
Wow, that's amazing. So what is your favorite country for I know you were living also in different countries. So was in terms of living and plus taxes, all advantages, like what are your top 3, 4 countries as well?
Yeah, I mean, generally for living, I'm a big fan of Italy, and we already extensively spoke about Italy. And up to half a year, you can live there without any issues anyway. And even if you want to live there longer, then you have a lot of different tax programs. I'm a big fan of Argentina, which is also quite Italian, you can say, which is now has a libertarian president, but still a long way to go. So the country isn't that attractive at the moment, but getting better. But just for lifestyle, for living, it basically has everything I want from a country in terms of like culture, weather, landscapes, people, and so on. Yeah.
Any other you would add to this list?
Yeah, I mean, if it really goes to living, I mean, traveling is something else. I like countries like New Zealand or Indonesia or even Norway or other Nordic countries. I'm not a big fan of the tropics myself. I rather like cold and polar zones. I've been 10 times to Antarctica already, for example. But for really lifestyle, I mean, probably Brazil then. Yeah, I like Argentina. I also like Brazil a lot. This is like more my type of environment. I'm not a big fan of Asia, for example. Yeah, I much more like the food and the culture and so on in Latin America over Asia.
And currently how your business and your team is more like also international?
Yeah, it's very international. I mean, I have around 8 full-time employees and a couple of freelancers working for me, and they're all working from different time zones in different countries. They're all completely remote. It's actually a requirement to work for me. Yeah, you are not allowed to pay taxes.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, and how does your day look like typically, as an entrepreneur? How do you plan your day and, like how's your working and
Well,
also the
there's not a day as the other, since I don't have an office or typical routines. It's all very time zone dependent. So I have to plan my schedule according to the time zones. I mean, it really evolved over time. Now I'm doing a couple of consultings a week, lots of interviews on podcasts, write an article now and then, answer some emails, do a lot of voice messages. So basically, to be more efficient, I started basically to do all requests via WhatsApp and Telegram. People are writing me, are only allowed to write, not no voice messages, but I do voice messages so I can easily support 100 people a day with certain knowledge. And then maybe do my calls now and then. I often don't work during the day. I mean, my life always was not like being an entrepreneur, earning a lot of money. I always wanted to prioritize my personal passions, my traveling, and so on. So I work 3 4 hours a day, often early in the morning or late in the evening, like now. And during the day, I do other stuff. Yeah. So I basically have a lifestyle business. It was never the priority to make a lot of money. The priority was always having a lot of time and earning enough money to still, yeah, to do the nice passions I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. And in terms of your efficiency as well, this is very interesting for me because you have a huge community, right? And everyone can write you, and you reply back almost to every message as well. How do you manage in terms of time resources?
Yeah, I mean, you just need the right discipline and then, of course, the right methodology. Like for me, always since day one, I never had people phone me, for example. No one knows my number. And if someone calls me, I don't answer. Yeah. So people have to write me and then I can decide what I do with them, schedule a call. I mean, it now costs 3,000 euros, yeah, because I don't want to exchange time to money. I mean, I still do it, and there's not much other people who have my knowledge. So I'm still happy to help if people want to afford that. But generally, it's just asymmetric conservation, and this allows me to open to answer very very quickly to all requests, of course. And I just need 1 2 hours every day. I need that. I need to be disciplined. I need to do it because if I don't do it for a couple of days, then it will be 10 hours to answer everything. I often have that. But I mean, this is very good, like marketing and sales, because even in AI ages, most companies have chatbots. But here, like the chef of the company answers the people personally, and that gives a
Yeah.
lot of trust and makes it much easier to sell certain products. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it very good also with the voice message reply back. I mean, it doesn't take you a lot of time, but people also know it's not a chatbot, right? That I find very smart. And how do you currently like? I know you built one of the biggest communities in Germany that is very very well known for taxes and also globally as well. So how did you build that community? Actually, what was the secret behind that you attracted so many people also into your community?
Yeah, I mean, it just grew over time, mainly because I'm living what I'm preaching. Yeah, so I'm not just sitting in an office in Germany and recording videos. I'm traveling the world. I've been to every country. I'm doing meetings. I'm doing presentations. I meet with people. So now we do a lot of meetups. Almost every day we have a meetup in another city in the world where people meet each other. The stateless community, I mean, that's my blog in German is called Staatenlos, stateless. And this also basically brand name is now a name many people give to themselves. They speak themselves of stateless. Yeah, so the pathetic traveler, the entrepreneurs traveling without a residency are stateless. So that makes it very easy to identify as part of that community. And there's many conferences and seminars on meetings now where people can just congregate and make new friends and business partners. And back then, 10 years ago, I started with some seminars, and now it's a big movement. Of course, and you have all the social media, the Facebook, the Telegram, the Instagram, and it's just a certain identity. Yeah.
What was the number one secret that helped you grow over time? I know you said discipline over years, right? That helped you actually to grow that community such a big. Besides being disciplined, right? Like, what was
Yeah,
your
of
number?
course, you need to stay. You need to create content regularly. I mean, for example, my blog posts now it's 550 different articles on my blog for free. In the beginning, I made like every second day I made an article. Then in the middle, like a couple of years ago, in 1 year, I didn't post a new article at all. But there I made a lot of videos, for example. Now again, I'm back to creating the content myself every 2-3 days because there's so much to cover. Yeah. But I think the real secret is, of course, really business dependent. For me, it was always also being polarizing and provoking, not being fearful of confronting certain tax advisors, for example, who who often have like in my industry basically use fear to sell certain products, and I'm always confronting them and basically doing opposite arguments. Yeah, people don't need to be fearful. It's all very easygoing. Not why I say it is because it really is. If you really know the laws and handle them properly, there's not much to be feared on. And it's much easier to have a structure for 2,000 euros legally than for 200,000 legally. Yeah. So many people just want to make money off fear. And I confront them and say, you don't need that. But sometimes I'm much more provocative as well, of course. On our website, it said taxes is theft. Yeah. So I always use this libertarian arguments to trigger many people. And that's quite successful. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds really impressive. Now you do mostly like SEO blogs, and beyond that, also YouTube videos. I see, but what else do you use also for attention? Like I mean, for getting people into your communities.
I mean, there's a lot of word of mouth, and we have a lot of like
Mhm.
guerrilla marketing things. For example, we have over 50 mobile homes now traveling through Europe, which have basically banners promoting our blog on their mobile homes. So everyone traveling through Europe will see it over time. But generally, I mean, it's a lot of online traffic over SEO, over of course paid marketing as well. We do Google ads, we do Facebook Meta ads. We have big social media on Instagram. I have my personal profile, but we have a big business profile as well. All the other social media. Lots of other ideas. I mean, we cooperate with lots of other people, have a lot of communities. Basically, every German online coach or other people with a big community cooperate with us, send us clients. We sometimes send them clients. So it's all very mutual, yeah.
For those entrepreneurs who are digital entrepreneurs who are just getting started and want to grow and scale their companies, what would be your number one advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, number one advice is to structure themselves properly. I mean, if you start your business in Germany and pay 50% or even more taxes, then of course it's a much longer path to get successful. And for certain businesses, of course, getting subsidies and getting government funds can be necessary. But generally, if you do a digital business, it's a suicide to do it in your high taxed home country. Yeah, then rather compromise on a couple of other things and search a remote team and build it individually on a global level. Yeah, and it's much more time saving and money saving, and yeah, much more beneficial, especially if you want a proper business with like proper income from day one, or not like some hyped business you want to
Christoph?
exit for multi-millions, but which doesn't have any relevant value.
Okay, great. Christoph, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Looking forward to our next meeting and thank you. Thank you so much.